We're going to devote our energies to sports and gardening, all the cultural pursuits as far as they're concerned. In fact, we're going to put the goons to sleep. Meanwhile, we dig.
Here we go again.
Greetings and welcome to the Anadrome. This is Burn Power coming to you on another October day. October 30th is when I'm recording this. You won't see this till probably a few days, a week or so after Halloween. But, you know, the mood is there. I know I haven't turned this into a horror channel. More music is coming up, but I got just a couple more things to get out of my system. And I should be good for a little while. I like horror. But I also like all sorts of other movies as well. So, excuse me while I indulge my questioning of what it means to be frightened in movie theaters, to go to a movie theater and then want to be afraid. Okay, well, I've got this round circle thing. StreamYard's giving me a new sort of look here. But what we're doing is actually, I saw some people doing reviews of Variety magazine put out their 100 greatest horror films. And what's interesting is I've seen a couple of different people responding to this. And one was group of people, was it, I want to say Nerdrotic, but maybe it was the Film Threat, groups of people. But the funny thing to me about it was how people would react. I also saw an individual guy who I could tell was a bit less connected to horror. He liked horror films, but didn't know a lot of the history. But it was funny to me, some of the reactions. They would jump up and say, that's not horror. Or the guy who didn't seem to know as much would say, like, I wonder what that film is doing there. Is that a horror film? And I wanted to go on record and say, okay, here's what I think about the Variety top 100 of horror. Before we get into this, I just want to remind you, we can use the help. We want more subscribers on this channel. We've only got, well, we've done all right. Got about over 500 now, I think. But we need more. And so if you like what I'm doing here, subscribe. I would listen to me first and listen to what I'm saying. You may subscribe and then say, what is this guy talking about? So let's do that first. But like it if you like it. And if you're feeling really good, there is a PayPal link down below. Use that or the GoFundMe link. They both work. And contribute to the channel because I can't make any money off of YouTube because I'm living in the country, not the U.S. state of Georgia. Long story. So, the 100 best horror movies of all time. And it is, of course, filled with many of the most predictable movies, but it also has some pretty nice, unpredictable ones here as well. And I think part of the reason for that, and I think this is why people who were watching this got upset, because it's made by a group of critics in Los Angeles, and they clearly are not the millennials. They're Gen Xers and baby boomers as well, reviewing things. And I know, because I'm almost 70, my view on movies, although I've kept up with horror films quite a bit, but my view is very different from younger people. Okay, Repulsion definitely deserves to be here, one of Polanski's best. A film that couldn't have been made without Psycho, to which it owes great debt, but it's the female version. Suspiria. Indeed, it belongs here. Many people were saying, oh, it should be much higher. I've never been one of those people who thinks Suspiria is the greatest film of all times. And in fact, I lean a little more towards the newer version, which I know is heresy. But I do love the film, and I like Dario Argento. I'm just not... Would I put it in my own top 100? Not sure. Devil's Backbone, solid. Yes, Guillermo del Toro, classic. Haunting, yeah, I think that should be in a top 100. I'd put it a bit higher. Invasions of the Body Snatchers, 76. I believe that it belongs there. Dead Alive, I'm not so sure about that. And this is a place where I will question them. Event Horizon. I know a lot of people really love this film in its it's gained a real cult following. Would I put it in a top 100 films of my own? No, I wouldn't. But it is certainly good. I certainly have a copy of it. So Cat People has got to be in here. A great Val Lewton film. I think it should be higher on the list because it's so important. Human Centipede 2 should be in the garbage, not here. It's just, the idea of people strapped to each other's assholes. No. Dead of Night, one of the first anthology films with an absolutely creepy puppet in the flesh-crawling sense of the word. Page of Madness, Japanese silent horror, great choice. Horror of Dracula. I suppose that'll do for a Hammer horror film. Blood Feast. Okay, we got to stop. Herschel Gordon Lewis, Blood Feast. No, this shouldn't be in a top 100 of all times. It's an important film because it's the first official splatter film, but is it a good film? No. And because of that, it shouldn't be here. I think you really have to, if you're going to honor one early splatter film, it's got to be Night of the Living Dead, which I'm sure will be later in this. The Vanishing, absolutely. Village of the Damned. It's a good film. I don't know if it's top 100 good, although the Brits may like it more than I do. Reanimator, yeah, okay, why not? Dead Ringers. I think this is interesting because this is the kind of film that gets overlooked, and this is where you can tell you've got a real mix of people voting here. It's not all like millennials voting, because millennials voting is so predictable. Millennials and Gen Z, they have the same top 10 and such. It's always The Shining, The Exorcist, Halloween, The Thing, and all of that sort of thing. It's just that there's this list of films they always put up there. Whereas people from the past, older folks like myself, will look at a film like this and go like, oh yeah, this is an amazing film. Okay, Little Shop of Horrors, no, this should not be here. Again, same as Blood Feast, just not made well. What? No, that film shouldn't be here. It's a ghost story, but no, What Lies Beneath. Wolfman, yes, total icon. House of Wax, I think so. Probably down lower than it is here. The Omen, yeah, but probably in the lower reaches, even lower than 79. I just don't think it's that strong a film. Angst, never seen. Here it's a very interesting psychological horror film. Okay, The Blob, let's talk about it. I like cheesy 1950s horror and science fiction, of which this could be either. I would probably want to put it on I have put it on my shelves under science fiction. But here's what gets me about this. When I hear people talking about 1950s science fiction and horror films, almost invariably, if they're above a certain age, let's put that cutoff at around 45, 50 right now, they'll say, oh, I really like The Blob. I mean, with predictability. And I own a copy. I've got a copy here with me in Tbilisi. And you know what? It's just, it's fun, but it's just not that great. And the fact that somehow it's wormed its way into being the first film so many of a certain kind of people will say when you mention 50s science fiction and horror movies just makes me want to pull my hair out. I Walked with a Zombie. This should be a much higher up. It's such a great film, so eerie. pure mood, pure darkness, and philosophical thoughts. Descent, absolutely. This is one of my favorite films of the 21st century, and it is really chilling. Nightmare on Elm Street, when I watched other people talking about that, they all went like, what? So low? This should be near the top. And I think it's in a fine place right there. It should be in a top 100 list, but I as much as I like the film, it ain't that deep, it's just, and I'm not a big fan of franchise entertainment. So now we come to Blood for Dracula, which was this Paul Morrissey's X-rated Dracula thing, kind of sponsored by Andy Warhol. For people who liked midnight movies and stuff, yeah, I understand, but no, I don't think so. I don't. But this is where you can tell you have a generational split on the voting. Creature from the Black Lagoon, yes, and it should be higher. In my own list, it would certainly be higher than this. And maybe I'll put out a list of my own top 100 horror films someday. I haven't done that. I don't think I ever. I mean, I've made smaller lists, but not just horror. Hostel Part 2. Why not Hostel Part 1, which had the more important message about stupid Americans in Europe? The Wailing, yes, great Korean film, K-horror, and that belongs on the list. Near Dark, this is a personal favorite. I'm questioning whether it should be here, but I'm going to say, okay, yeah, let's do it. More people need to see it. Sixth Sense, okay, I got to stop this thing. I am not a big Sixth Sense person. There's a lot of people out there who just go, 1999, Sixth Sense, scariest movie I've ever seen. And I'm like, no, it's not that scary. It's kind of like meaningful, sentimental boo. And so no, I don't want to see it on the top 100. It's just, to me, it's not that great. I understand why everybody else likes it though, but those people tend to be younger. Okay, Possession with Isabelle Adjani. Great film, but maybe further down the list. The Babadook, no. It's just, to me, it's a lot of stuff without much going on. Incredible Shrinking Man, no. Belongs in the science fiction list. Planet Terror, no. Doesn't belong on this list. It's, fun. I've watched it several times, but no. The 1931 version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm going to say no. I don't think it's quite good enough. Gremlins, I can see the sentimental reason why it's here, but no, I don't think it should be on this list. There's so many other great horror films. Candyman, yes, it should be on this list. It seems like a good position for it. Funny Games, a lot of people tell me it's really great. I've never seen it. Such is Life. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, I don't think it belongs really on this list, or certainly not this high up. Raw, okay. I'd probably give it to 10 if it's on this list, although Raw is great too. Peeping Tom. This is like a film that should be higher up, but not that much higher up necessarily. But it's also a serial killer movie that came out the year Psycho. And a very important film, kind of killed Michael Powell's career because everyone said, what did you just make? And nobody was ready for it. It doesn't have that kind of entertainment zing that Psycho has. It's a much more of a downer, a dark, dark downer of a film, believe it or not, than Psycho. Psycho shocked everyone, but this film just got under people's skin, literally, if you know how he's killing the women. Okay, The Fly. I understand why people like it. I'm not as huge a fan. I've got about 5 other David Cronenberg films I like better. I'd rather see The Brood on here. Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, rush that up to the top 20. Let the right one in. Okay, I'll let it sit there, although I think a lot of people like it a lot more than me. Eraserhead, put it in the top 10 for me, but it belongs here for certain. Blood and Black Lace. I've got it on the shelf. I'm waiting to watch it. I'm hoping it's good. It probably will be. Irreversible. Let's stop on this. Irreversible is a very interesting film because, to me, I don't put Gaspar Noé in the horror section. I put him in the Gaspar Noé section. Do you get it? Because all his films are Gaspar Noé films before anything else. Are some of them horrifying and horrible and horror? Yes. Is this one, I mean, the long scene in the tunnel? Yeah, that's pretty horrifying. The smashing the guys in the club scene with a fire extinguisher? Yeah, that's pretty bad. we'll leave it here as a representation of him, although I would probably rather see Climax here if I was going to put a Gaspar Noé in horror. Onibaba, great Japanese ghostly demon type film. Yes, absolutely. The Witch, very good choice. Robert Eggers' calling card, and he did such a good job with so little money. The Birds, of course, it's got to be here. As does Psycho later on. If Psycho's not on here, you just burn the list. Godzilla, yeah, we need some creature features on here. And I know there's one coming up further that a lot of people say, that's not horror. But Godzilla is a horror film. I mean, if you were to read The Thing, okay, let's stop this baby. The Thing should be on this list. And it should be a lot higher up. It should be a lot higher than this. But this is where you get your generational divide again. So you've got older critics. When this film first came out, it did not get good reviews, as does another famous film from this era, which was not a big fan of when it came out, but I've come to like it a bit more. But everyone else thinks it's one of the best films ever made, as is The Thing, and it should be higher up. Okay, The Invisible Man from 1933. Yes, a great film by James Whale, and Claude Rains does a great job of acting. Amazing film. Manhunter, should it be on this list? I'm not sure. If Silence of the Lambs is on this list, which it should be, we can throw this into the next 100. It's good. I've watched it many times, but I still don't think it's quite deserves to be on the top 100 of horror films of all time. Vampire absolutely does, and I'd like to see it at least another 15 points higher, because this film is so creepy, and I think younger folks today really need to discover it. I mean, talk about shadow plays. 28 Days Later, yes, absolutely. Great Danny Boyle with Cillian Murphy, and just the whole setup and the reimagining of these zombie-like infected creatures. The Devils, I think it's a very important film. Kind of esoteric. I wouldn't put it here. That's where the older voters got in. Bride of Frankenstein, yes, very important film. Many people think Bride of Frankenstein is better than Frankenstein. Quite on, going to have to confess I haven't seen it. So I will just trust that it belongs on this list somewhere. Freaks. Yes, absolutely belongs to be here. An amazing film. I wish they'd find the whole version. Deep Red. Okay, maybe not. Why is Deep Red higher than Suspiria, though? Hereditary. Okay. Hereditary definitely deserves to be here, and I think it's one of the strongest films of the 21st century and belongs higher. One film I don't think I remember being on this list, which really is a crime to me, from the 21st century, is Martyrs. Martyrs deserves to be in the top 10. But this is both a generational thing, and I just don't think enough people have discovered the film because its reputation is quite intense, and for a reason. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 1956 version being rather high up. Now, many people these days tend to favor the 1970s, is it 78 version? 78? I missed reading that when it came. 76, 78, somewhere in there. Anyway, I think that I actually prefer this one because it's a lot subtler. They're both really great. On a given day, I would choose one or the other. But yeah, I'll take this at 35. Evil Dead 2, I prefer the original Evil Dead. M, surprising choice, older voters definitely, excellent choice. Night of the Hunter, is it a horror film? Yeah, kind of. I think so. Ringu, yeah, there are a lot of people who are younger today who prefer Ring to Ringu, and that's like a film geek choice. Okay, we got to stop on this one. Eyes Without a Face. For me, now personally on my list, this would be the number 1 or 2 horror films of all times. This, to me, is absolutely beautiful, absolutely horrifying. French film. It was originally botched as a foreign film in America because they thought, oh, it's a horror film. Let's just give it a really bad dubbing and throw it out under the name The Horror Chamber of Dr. Faustus. I think that was what they called it. But this is such a beautiful film. at the same time, it's horrifying. And so this is one of my favorites of all times. I'm just glad to see it on the list because a lot of people don't realize what a great film this is. Phantom of the Opera, absolutely. Lon Chaney version. The Wicker Man, no Nick Cage for us today. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great film. Should it be this high up? I don't know. We'll debate it. The 31 Dracula, yeah, it's got to be here somewhere. And so why not there? The Innocents, also a great film. It deserves to be on the top 100. Might be a little high for my bloodstream, but Scream, yeah, it's got to be on here. The Blair Witch Project also has to be on here. It's such an important film. And I think for a top 100 list like this, it's got to be important. Yes, Dawn of the Dead has to be here. It's just as important in its own way as Night of the Living Dead. Carnival of Souls, a classic of creepiness and ghostliness. Black Sunday, bit high, but I would put it down in the 80s, actually. Get Out, a lot of people like this a lot more than I do. I enjoy it. I'd put it further down the list. The Mummy from 1932, glad to see it's getting some love, and I'll take it there. It is a classic and fairly creepy in a very understated way. The Shining. Now, some people were complaining, wait, The Shining at number 18? Why is it at number 18? To which my thought is, on my own personal list, it wouldn't make the top 100. Which a lot of people, especially younger people who, the kind of horror people who make YouTube videos would be like, what? Because, and I'll tell you why, I have a very personal connection to it. I worked in Glacier National Park in Montana. And there was a year in between. It was 1978. They came there looking for exteriors for the hotel. They eventually found one in Colorado. But I worked at the Many Glacier Hotel. Now, to me, the Many Glacier Hotel was a truly dark, scary film. But for some reason, Stanley Kubrick wanted to make this in this kind of almost Art Deco type thing, which does not fit the Rocky Mountains whatsoever. But for whatever reasons, he decided that this is what the interior should look like. And I guess, being in the kind of hotel I was working on, we played in 1980, the year this came out, we played hide and go seek in this old, massive wooden hotel at the end of the season with flashlights in the dark. The Shining doesn't even come close to how absolutely chilling that was. That was the scariest game I've ever played in my life, because you have to understand it was much bigger than this hotel's interiors. So, secondly, I had read The Shining, and I went and saw it that summer when it came out. I was actually working in Montana the second time, 1980, and I was just disappointed. And I hadn't even read any reviews of it yet, but I was disappointed because it just seemed to leave out some of the best aspects of the novel. Jack Nicholson does not go crazy in this movie. He starts off kind of crazy, so he's less influenced. And there's this great story of Stephen King getting a call in the middle of the night, and it's Stanley Kubrick, and Kubrick says, Stephen King, do you believe there's a God? And Stephen King goes, yeah. And Stanley Kubrick goes, I don't, and hang up the film. And I think that's why I really don't like this film, is because it's a curse film, really. But having said that, I have warmed up to it over the years. I watched it about 5 times in my life, twice in movie theaters in the 80s. And I've given it all the chance in the world. I enjoy it now, but I wouldn't put it in my own top 100. But I understand why everybody else would say, that's too low. It should be in the top 10 or 5. But not for me. Diabolique, Les Diaboliques, The Devils. A very good film. Does it deserve to be this high? I don't think so. But I think it should be probably around number 75 or 85 or something like that. Halloween, yeah, it should be here. And a lot of people are probably thinking it should be in the top 10. But look at yourself as you're saying that. What's your age? And that's all I'm going to say, is that we tend to go along with our generational cohorts, or what we imagine them to be. Don't Look Now. This film has risen in people's appreciation over the years. I like it. I don't know if I'd put it in the top 100, but people now are considering it one of the greatest horror films ever. I saw it in the movie theater. I thought, yeah, this is good. Didn't shock me as much as it seems to shock some other people. But then again, I'm kind of immune to certain imagery. So, but I like the setting in Venice. And yes, it is basically Antichrist takes a lot from this plotline. Nosferatu absolutely belongs here. This is one of the greatest films. It's over 100 years old now. We've got a new Robert Eggers version coming out in December. Silence of the Lambs, absolutely. Now, this is one of the ones where I watch people, and the group of guys who were all, like I say, I can't remember if it was the Film Threat group or if it was the Nerdrotic group, but I'm sure either one would have said that. They would go, you always get these people. This film always provokes, that's not horror, to which I'm sitting there going like, okay, you got cannibalism, you got serial killers, you've got blood and guts strewn across the way, you've got, just this, all this stuff in here, and that's not horror. It's a thriller. And I've come to the conclusion, what in the world is a thriller? There's no thriller encyclopedias out there, not the way there are for horror films. Horror films have so many books written about them. Thrillers do not, because it's not really the same kind of genre. It's more of, yeah. Anyway, say what you want. Silence of the Lambs absolutely deserves to be here. And I did make a video on classifications of horror genres because I find there are different ways to. I go by subject, so yes, this is definitely a serial killer movie or psycho killer movie. And then there are mood genres, like J-horror is kind of a mood genre. Found footage is definitely a mood genre, not a subject genre. And you can go check that out. King Kong. This one got everyone upset too, because they're saying, that's not horror. And I'm sitting there saying, I'll tell you what this says about you. You are under the age of probably 35. You have never seen this in a big movie theater. I have. I'll tell you, while it's one of the greatest puppet shows that ever existed, when you see King Kong standing about 30 feet tall, it changes absolutely everything. It is absolutely incredible. And I did have a chance to see that back in the late 70s. And but yeah, hey, come on. Everyone, when this came out, thought it was a horror film. It's still a horror film. Alien, absolutely great film. Maybe should be a little higher even. And I certainly prefer it to Star Wars, which came out around the same time. Carrie, absolutely great film. Should it be this high? I don't think so. But it certainly is great, and maybe it should be another 10 to 20 notches down. And then there are people who think this might be the best Stephen King adaptation, which I might be tempted to agree with. I think that is a good point. This was another one that got everyone steamed up, and I totally agree with it, and that is they called it a horror film. Salò, 120 Days of Sodom. The Italian fascists kidnap a group of about 40 younger high school age people and have their way with them in every possible way imaginable. It is absolutely dark. It is not a pornographic film. It is not explicit, but it certainly is suggestive of the darkest aspects of humanity. And for me, this is the first of the style of cabal horror films. Cabal horror is not supernatural. It is essentially the group version of a serial killer film. It's when a group is manipulating everything to make a certain outcome happen. Kill List would be a great illustration of a cabal film. And is this a horror film? It's called Salò, or The 120 Days of Sodom. And if you know the source material, there is nothing more horrific. And should it be this high up? I don't know. It is a tough watch. I would put it further down just to give the list a little rest. Frankenstein. I'm glad to see it here. I am not sure it deserves to be above Nosferatu or even The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, but it certainly belongs up with them. And I think it's a great film. Like I say, the general consensus among horror historians is that The Bride of Frankenstein, which connects with it like a glove, is the better film. Audition from Japan. Does this deserve to be at number 7? I would say no. However, it can be in the top 100, but 7 is just a bit too high. I would say most people sitting and watching this film would be a little bored at the beginning of the film, and then at the end, they would be trying to, crawl through glass to get away from it. It's such a divided film as far as how it feels. But should it be here? It should be on the list. I think this is way too high. What do you think? If you've seen it, you know what I mean. If you haven't seen it, you need to really get yourself ready. Ready in a way that, Art the Clown is comedy by comparison. Night of the Living Dead, yes, very important film. Should it be this high? Not quite so sure about that, but yes, it's absolutely great. And I'll take it here. Why not? Thank you, Mr. George Romero, for bringing this up from whatever pit in your mind. Rosemary's Baby. I'm glad to see Polanski here. This is not my favorite Polanski horror film. The Tenant would be. But I get it. I get it why this is considered so important. I would recommend The Seventh Victim, a Val Lewton produced film. Very similar theme. And as I mentioned recently on another video, I would much rather watch that over and over. Similar theme. Jaws, yes. And this is, of course, one that gets people going like, that's not horror. Whereas I'm sitting there going like, look at that image. Yeah, it is. It is a horror film. Yeah, it takes place in the sunlight in suburbia. Yeah, it's got a big rubber shark. If you're going to call King Kong and Godzilla horror films, then this has got to be a horror film as well. Now, I file this under adventure horror, which is also where I file cannibal jungle films as well, because they are variations on the great themes of ocean, snow, desert, mountains, all these adventure settings. And I think adventure, unlike action or thrillers, is much more a precise genre. So Jaws, yes, absolutely belongs as a horror film. And evidently, I'm not the only one who thinks so. So if you don't think so, you can take it to the bank. So, Psycho absolutely belongs to be here. And you can see what's coming up next. Exorcist has got to be here. And maybe my second favorite horror film is number 1. So at least I'm not completely heretical. But yeah, Psycho has got to be it's always got to be in the top 5. The Exorcist, likewise, very important film. This doesn't disturb me as much as it does so many other people, but part of it was I didn't go see it as a teenager. I saw it in my mid-20s the first time. And I'm also not a squeamish person. I knew a lot about it. I heard Richard Pryor doing jokes about it. It talks about what would happen if a black pastor came in. We'll just say that, see how far I can get away with it. This is number 1. And for this list, I'm so happy to see this as number 1. Because I think even more than The Exorcist, this one holds up. You can't get postmodern about it. It just absolutely won't allow you to. The film was made to be essentially a film which questioned what the hippies had done to us. It questioned the kind of commercialization and consumerism of the 1970s. And it's just an absolutely film. Thank you, Tobe Hooper, the late, great Tobe Hooper, for this and several other really great films. So, for me, this is it. And I'm glad to see it above the other films in this list. I had no hope of my favorite film on here, Eyes Without a Face, Les Yeux Sans Visage, being up here, but I'm glad to see this here. Okay, so there we are. Our review of the Variety Top 100 of All Time of Horror. Not a bad list, not a great list, but I would say it's 2/3 interesting to me. And that's the reason they have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on top. That doesn't happen. Usually it's going to be The Exorcist or The Shining or something. And this list was a little closer to how I see things. But maybe you see things differently. Write in comment below. Burn, your choices are trash. I'll take it. You can. I don't have to have people agree with me. And I think horror generates strong emotions because we're all afraid of different things. And one person's horror might be another person's, Disney movie. Some Disney movies that are really cute and cuddly, I think, are horror. So, having said that, thank you for coming along with us today. But wait a minute. We have a word from our sponsor. Sponsor is probably too strong a word. This is a book I wrote. It has 3 plays that I wrote, and it's called Three Motions. Motions is the Old English word during Shakespeare's time for plays, and for puppet plays in particular. And they are 50 pages with an essay by myself as well. You could perform these plays. 21st Century Faust in particular is really good, and I recommend it. And what does it cost to get one of these rare treasured books, of which there are only 150 were printed? There are only 80, well actually 79 now, available to the outside world. I do have someone in America and someone in Europe who will send them to you. And we can send them beyond as well. It would cost a little bit more money if you're in South America or Asia or something like that. But what does it cost? It costs $25. Is the book worth $25? Physically? No. But spiritually? Yes. Because what it is that the book is by default rare. The book is also a symbol of your supporting this channel. That's primarily what it's for. And I give $5 to the guys who help me mail this in different countries. And there's about $5 or so, depending, that goes to postage and handling. So, what's stopping you from supporting the channel? This is a very limited offer. When these are done, they are done. I'll never print them up again. And they are all signed and numbered. And so that's proof of authenticity. You get to touch something I touched. Briefly. The links are in the description section below. Go check them out. Use them. Support the channel. Get a book written by me, Byrne. It's my very first book. Well, thank you for joining us today. And from Tbilisi, Georgia, this is Byrne saying Drobit. Check out some more videos on the channel. There's a couple listed at the end. More horror content, but we've got more music content and films and other kinds of arts coming up soon. Drobit, which means temporarily. We will meet again. We'll be gone from each other just a little while. Nachwamdis.
When I go, I want you to give me 5 minutes. I told you boys I'm no escape artist. For the first time, I like the odds.
At the round earth's imagined corners, blow your trumpets, angels, and arise, arise from death, you numberless infinities of souls.